Good afternoon, everyone. Happy New Year and welcome to the Martin County School Board Workshop. I would like to call this meeting to order. Can we please rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Falls, will you take the roll, please?
Dr. Moriarty?
Here.
Mrs. Roberts?
Yes.
Mrs. Russell?
Here.
Mrs. Pritchett?
Here. At this time, we will have public comment. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak? Seeing none, we will move on to district presentations and updates. Employee benefits insurance update for 2025-26 insurance renewal. Mr. Don Calderon, thank you.
Test. There we go. Okay. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board, Superintendent Maine. I am Don Calderon, Director of Risk Management and Employee Benefits with the Martin County School District, and alongside me is Dustin Keene, our Senior Benefits Consultant with the Guerin Group. So our first presentation today is the employee benefit package for the 25-26 plan year. We are at that time of year where we start receiving our first offers of renewals. And we're going to go over those renewals, a timeline of expectations, and then we also prepared some additional information for our medical insurance renewal. So just taking a look at the screen here, you can see that we have quite a bit of lines of coverage up for renewal. Obviously, medical insurance is always at the forefront. And we also have dental insurance, life insurance, disability, the Employee Assistance Program, and our partnership with WEX for our flexible spending account and COBRA administration. So what we're going to do first before we get into the renewals is go over some information that I think is very important to understand in terms of our medical insurance renewal. So prior to the winter break, our department, along with the Guerin Group, met with our team that serves our account at Florida Blue, and we had a very comprehensive stewardship report that went over the claims for the 23-24 plan year, which ended on June 30th, 2024. And I wanted to kind of take this time for this opportunity to give you some highlights and some information that is very important to understand, so you could understand the overview of where we are as a district for our medical insurance and how that will impact our first offer of renewal. So having said that, I'm going to hand it off to Dustin Keene, and he's going to go over some of the claims information.
All right, good afternoon. This first slide really is to give you an understanding of your wellness screenings amongst your membership. So high level, your wellness screening utilization is higher than Florida Blue's book of business pretty much as a whole across all metrics. In addition to that, 3 of the 5 are actually increasing the amount of employees getting those screenings versus the prior plan year. So that's just a testament of your team, your staff, marketing, the wellness program, everything. That is very, very good utilization that we like to see. From a high level in claims, and to take a step back, this is last plan year, so July 1, 2023 through June 30th, 2024 versus the prior plan year, so 2 full plan years. Last year, your plan spend was up 19%, or roughly $3 million. If you look in that exhibit 1.11, most of that increase of the $3 million, about $2.4 million, are due to your high-cost claimants. High-cost claimants defined as members incurring claims over $75,000 in the plan year. Number of high-cost claimants increased by 24%. Roughly 61% of those members are expected to continue this current plan year. And interestingly, if you remove those high-cost claimants from the claims, your overall trend with all your membership is only about a 4.6% increase, which is really, really good. Average increase across the United States is right around 10 to 12%. So looking at the place of service where those claims are being incurred, the inpatient setting, those claims are up about 64%. Outpatient claims are up about 29%. However, the emergency room and urgent care, we're seeing good trends, actually decreasing, which kind of backs into that narrative that overall your utilization is good. It's just those high-cost conditions which are treated in the inpatient, outpatient for and cancer are up. Pharmacy increased 1% in terms of the number of pharmaceuticals dispensed. However, claims are up about 11%, and that's due to higher cost medications coming onto the market to treat higher cost conditions. Virtual visits, this is also a great trend. We see increased trend here as a positive thing. The telemedicine or teledoc is up 18%. Telemedicine is up 11%. The reason this is good is because it's avoiding the higher cost settings in the urgent care and the ER. So good trends here. From a top 5 diagnosis category by plan spend, neoplasms are number 1. Those are your cancers, and that has historically always been your number 1. Number 2, factors influencing health. Those are things such as wellness exams. They actually lump in maternity care there as well. Number 3, musculoskeletal. Think of osteoarthritis, back disorders, neck disorders. Circulatory, anything to do with the circulatory system, heart, and then digestive. Think of Crohn's, anything to do with the intestines, digestive system, etc. This slide really is meant to, bring you up to current date, which are claims through November. We should have December claims here in a couple of days. Target loss ratio is 75%. Just to clarify what that loss ratio means, claims divided by premium. In other words, for every dollar you give the carrier in premium, 75 cents of that goes to claims, which leaves 25% for the cost to administer the plan and pooling and stop loss that they build into the plan as well. So 75% would get you to a roughly, we call it a no increase. Last plan year, you're at about 104%. This current plan year, or the current rolling 12 months, you're at 103%. So in other words, every dollar you give Florida Blue, they pay out $1.03 claim. From enrollment to claims ratio, 70% enrollment in the HMO, which accounts for 76% of your claims. High deductible is 22%, making up 10%, and the PPO is 8% of your enrollment, making up 14%. So these two pie charts are meant to show you the enrollment migration, pre-open enrollment and post-open enrollment. As you remember, you did a lot of incentivization for employees to enroll into that high deductible health plan where your claims are the lowest through funding the HSA, making a free plan, etc. So you'll see on the right-hand side, the biggest difference here, you'll see in the high deductible pie chart, that has increased about 5%, which is a massive jump in enrollment, which is great. That has saved claims experience as, again, we see lower claims experience in that plan. So with all that being said, backing into where we at with our initial renewals, our not to exceeds. Don mentioned all the lines up for renewal. So what we have here is just all of those lines. We have paid, so if it's district or employee or retiree paid, and the increase, and then the loss ratio. So dental, which is partially district paid, the not to exceed is at a 5%, which is a great starting point. It has a 1-year rate guarantee with an 84% loss ratio, so good starting point for us to negotiate. Life insurance, there's kind of 3 parts to your life insurance. You have the district paid part for your employees, you have the employee paid part that they can purchase, and then you have retiree paid for the basic and sup. So for the district portion, the basic life is not increasing, so no increase to the district-paid life. For the employees' life insurance, those rates are also not increasing. The dependent life, so child and spouse coverage, is going up 185%. And if you look over to the right, that's due to the dependent supplemental loss ratio of 723%. That plan is running high. And then lastly, your retiree basic life, 300% increase, and the supplemental life for retirees, 400% increase. And that's due to loss ratio of 600% for the two plans as well.
So when you're giving us the 300, 400, and 185, can you tell us how many people that's involving? Because those numbers get inflated if it's a low number of people.
Yes, while I go through, we could. So are you looking for the retiree?
The three that are increasing, the retiree basic, retiree supplement, and the dependent
Yeah.
supplement. So if you know what the enrollment is on those, and at the same time, if you're looking for stuff to look up, as you're giving us a rolling 12 loss ratio of 103 and a current loss ratio of 99, do you have that broken down by HMO, PPO, and high deductible?
We do. We have it as one of the appendices.
Okay, thank you.
So for the life insurance, we do not have the number of employees enrolled. We just have the volume number, which is how your rates are calculated. Volume is the amount of death benefit, but we could take that as a takeaway and get back to you, Ms. Roberts. And then to answer your question on the claims experience for medical, break that into buckets. So we don't have the rolling 12 broken out by plan, but we do have the plan year loss ratio for each plan, if that helps. So for the HMO, loss ratio is 102% for the plan year to date. High deductible health plan, the loss ratio is 54%, and the PPO is at 160%. For the long-term and short-term disability, this is employee-only paid. This premium is at a 19% not-to-exceed increase, which equates to about a $2 to $3 per month increase for your employees, depending on the tier of coverage they're enrolled into. This is mostly being driven by the long-term disability loss ratio of 160%. Short-term disability loss ratio is at an 88%, which is a decent loss ratio for short-term, helping actually drive down that 19% a bit. For the EAP, this is just district paid, 41% increase, which equates to about $19,000 a year. This is mostly due to your claims are 16% higher than expected, and about 12% higher than Cigna or Evernorth's book of business. This is a trend that we're seeing across the board, kind of two factors being EAP is just increasing over year after year since COVID. And second, we're seeing provider reimbursement rates go up that are actually given back to those psychologists, et cetera. COBRA is district paid, that's a no increase. FSA district paid 16%, which equates to about $745 a year, which is relatively minimal. And then the one that's at the forefront as every year is up for renewal is your medical insurance, which is at a 32% not to exceed, backing into that 103% loss ratio. So kind of two things here. We did an independent projection based on your claims experience, and our formula calls for about a 20% increase. We're using medical trend of 5%. They're using medical trend of 10 to 12%, which is a big differentiator. The second part is we did ask for single-digit increase. They could not get there, so they are coming out the gate based upon where their formula is calling for, which is 30.
And they'll suggest plan changes to drive that down, correct?
Correct, and further negotiation.
Right,
on that.
okay, thank you.
So with that being said, looking for direction from the board on whether or not to RFP, and if so, what lines to RFP. Recommendation would be to bid the medical, but ultimately that's up to you. We do feel comfortable with the other lines of insurances on a starting point, but if the district were to bid, we do have a timeline with no RFP, which is this slide, and I'll go to the one with RFP, which just high level, the important dates here are we would issue an RFP this week. We have it ready to go. The responses would be due back February 12th. We would then present the initial results March 3rd to the insurance committee, March 4th to the workshop. And then we would then select finalists to negotiate, get best and final offers to present at the March 24th insurance committee meeting and the March 25th board meeting for final decision. And the way we kind of set this up is with the two processes of an initial shortlist and negotiate is we find that that gets the district the best competitive results. Competitive data can be shared at that best and final offer stage to negotiate them down as low as possible. With that, March 25th meeting, that would bring us to open enrollment in BenTech programming, which takes about 4 weeks at the minimum, to back into open enrollment starting April 23rd through May 2nd, which backs into your multi-check deadlines and eventually effective July 1st.
I'm just asking for input. I'll go last. You want to start?
So if we do.
Correct. We're hoping to get that tomorrow.
Yeah, we had a 124% loss ratio last December, so we're hopeful that it would be less than that.
That's because everybody has.
Correct.
The way this is set up is they would only have January data because we'd have to have best and final offers due and then now they do look at a rolling 12, so they will have the full 12 months to accommodate for that seasonal trend.
It does ring a bell, right? So, Mrs. Roberts, we We have to back everything out from when the multi-checks are dispersed because that's in both CBAs. So we use that date and we back everything out as far as we can go out. We do have an active open enrollment date of April 23rd through May 2nd because we have to get that data out of Bentech into payroll's hands so they can start using that data to disperse the multi-checks. So we definitely have the ability to be flexible, but ultimately it does take approximately 4 weeks for Bentech to be programmed, for all of the marketing material to be created and sent out, and we want to allow some time to educate our employees. So we did meet prior to the winter break with Mr. Carver, our Director of Purchasing, and Mr. Morrison, our Assistant of Finance, because at that time, prior to winter break, we had not received a not to exceed from Florida Blue, and since we got it just last Friday, we wanted to be prepared, and they have both graciously accepted the Guerin Group's offer to handle the RFP on behalf of the district. So we worked with staff and with our consultant to determine these. I guess that's my answer. My explanation that I just gave you is that we have built this timeline with as far out as we can go.
Doesn't help to say.
There would be other departments that would need to be part of that conversation to see if they be flexible with the data that they receive from Bentech in order to process the check.
What that absolute last date is, assuming that we could have a meeting if we're thinking would have a low February.
I agree with you.
Help the bid in order to be able to do that. And I know that everybody's got a lot of. I think that this is something that us saying, well, we have a scheduled meeting on this date. Best bid we can get.
So I take it you're okay with going to an RFP?
Well, I'm just saying that I don't think we can determine whether we're going to go to an RFP. What that calendar looks like. If this is the calendar we're living with, and this calendar, the one on it, I mean, that RFP is just using December, and then giving you a chance to adjust once with January.
Correct. The best and final would include January and the previous February 2020.
Right, but anybody with any sense. This January. To you by I think it's scary to think that if we don't do an RFP, 32%. Still, it's at a time when we have to entertain up that 65 box. But if I'm hearing you correctly,
Doctor?
Well, as someone new here and someone new to joining this wonderful health plan, just seems like the costs are just way too high. I don't see how families can afford this, honestly, and especially after this rate hike. So my thought would be to do an RFP as soon as possible, because if we don't, then it's going to be a 32% hike or 20% hike or whatever it is that is going to break some people's backs. So I would be inclined to do that ASAP. And I would also be inclined to do to get creative and maybe do an RFP with some local businesses to see how we can offset some of these costs, possibly with some local businesses that might be able to help us with scripts and MRIs and things like that, that might be able to do it in another way outside of just everything going through this health insurance, because I mean, there's just a lot of costs that we're running up. And if we can't find a way to offset that, and I don't think offsetting it is always just taking less coverage and higher deductibles and getting worse care, I think we should explore all options. Possibly there's a local vendor that might be able to help us do less doctor visits so that we can lower the cost that way. But I would be in favor of an RFP immediately going to the marketplace. Thanks.
Russell?
I'm also in favor of going to RFP.
As am I. So pull the trigger.
So when you do that, can you try to readjust your calendar, talk internally? I mean, so as you issue your RFP, if you can write it in such a way where you're giving yourself some flexibility on the other end for your best and final come back look, so that they could get more data. I mean, I really think, and I think you got it right on, is the problem is if we don't do an RFP, we know what we're looking at. We know 32, we know 20, we know that plan changes is going to still give us in the double digits, and the only way you're going to be able to see something different is by pushing out for an RFP. But I think that the way to really sweeten the RFP is by giving the respondent additional time and additional data in order to do that. So whatever that looks like, I know the board can be flexible as far as meetings in order to accommodate that. But I mean, I think, Dustin, you know when the claims numbers drop, so you know when January is going to drop. You would know pretty much when February and when March are going to drop, and see if at least February, and hopefully both February and March, can be worked in, so that instead of just getting your ability to look at January to come up with your final number, if you gave them February and March to come up with a final number, you're giving them two more pieces that I think, and regardless of where those two pieces land, it's not a surmising of what the gap is. I mean, I think in worst case, whatever that gap is from last year to this year, you know, your November step up, your December step up, et cetera. So that's the worst case, but I mean, but that's complete speculation. But you don't have to have that step up piece if you have the actual number, correct?
Yes, you are correct. Every real data that you get in terms of claims experience, they will replace with the unknown medical trend that they kind of assume.
Correct.
But to be transparent, that could also bite you in the rear end as well if your claims for February come in extremely high. So it could play both ways, but I understand your point, and our team will work with your staff to come up with a timeline to try to work into that. Just kind of working the numbers out in my head, we would need to have the best and final offers due the end of March for a board workshop early April, which would then put open enrollment 4 weeks out from that, which is the beginning of May to start. So we'll have to plan to see if that's
Right, and you could always schedule the workshop. So let's say you're talking about a workshop, you could also do the workshop and then immediately after the workshop, do the meeting, so that whatever direction we give you at the workshop, if you know where we're going with that, you can have those two things almost, which I think we did at one point, didn't we do that? Once, so,
I
so
think we
then
did
you
that 2
can,
years ago.
a
Yeah.
couple years ago, so
Yeah.
you could stack them on top of each other and actually get yourself so that there was some movement. And you all were prepared for that and responded beautifully for that so that we could get from point A to point B and kind of knowing where we were going. And that really helped. So it wasn't let's finish the workshop, now let's get our ducks in a row, now let's advertise for a meeting, now let's, it wasn't that another 2-week push or 1-week push. I mean, we were able to get that.
Yeah, unfortunately, we've been through this before, so
Yeah.
experience. But,
Thanks.
so I understand the direction from the board to allow the Garen Group to handle RFP, which is ready to go. They could pull the trigger on it, be issued tomorrow. Follow up with our staff tomorrow to take a look at what we can do to extend.
Superintendent Maine?
We do have a workshop on April 1st, so staff could prepare with you all that if we wanted to do the April 1st workshop followed by a meeting at that time, and then I will work with staff getting some green lights that we will make the timeline work to be able to get this accomplished so that you have the additional data.
And I know that you guys are working with showing people why they should be moving to the high deductible, correct? And so if we can continue that, because I think that's going to be meaningful, instead of waiting for those numbers to come out, if we can do that simultaneously.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we are very detailed in our communication, not only with our newly hired employees, but also during open enrollment. And so the numbers kind of speak for itself. I mean, we've seen tremendous growth in the high deductible health plan, in large part because the board has offered that zero premium option for employee-only coverage. And over the past 4 years, they've contributed to the health savings account. So everything that the board has done has definitely helped us to sell and to tell the story of how the high deductible health plan could be a benefit for them. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We will now have a presentation by Mr. Seacrest on the pool complex project update. Thank you.
So good afternoon, Madam Chair, school board members, Superintendent Maine. I'm here to give you an update on the pool project. There will be one slide change because this timeline for the pool project is fluid at this point in time, but we are narrowing down to an exact date of when we're going to receive some proposals for the pool. But I'll go through the timeline now. It is actually slide number 4. This was the current timeline. We had everything due for the 10th of January. We got back from all 3 holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. And unfortunately, what I predicted would happen, being in the construction field for over 20 years, we had vendors on vacation. They had offices half open, even though they were running. So basically, we got back the first week of January, and we had 2 vendors say they would not give us a proposal. And then last week, we had 2 vendors said they would do a proposal, but they would need till the 24th because now they're fully staffed and they would be able to put that proposal together. So if you look at the next slide, which I updated on the PowerPoint, and I can give you a copy if you want an updated copy, but basically from 12/9 to 1/24, each contractor was able to do a site visit and then basically prepare the proposal for us. On January 24th, the proposal is due to our office at 3 p.m. And then once we get that proposal from the 27th through the 31st, we will look at 2 proposals now because we actually have 2 contractors putting together that price. And then once we get those put together, we will put together that PO. And then my goal is in February. So this first item, to back up a little bit, on 11/19 at the school board meeting, we got direction from the school board to proceed with option number 1. Option number 1 had a course of action number 6 and a course of action, actually 6A, and then a course of action number 1. The course of action items under 6A are the electrical items only. So we're trying to address the higher concern issues now. The items under number 1 are more, everything non-electrical, I can put it that way. It has guardrails, paint, things like that. So that'll take a separate proposal request that we will have to go out with different, not architects, but different contractors, because it's a different type of field. The one we're putting together now under 6A deals only with electrical, so those are electrical contractor issues only. The one that we will start in February will deal with all the other items, which is a separate contract dealing with those items. So that's currently where we are with the project, but I did want to provide you an update with the timeline as it flexed with the holidays and everything moving forward in January. And I do have a copy. If you want a copy of that update, I can give that to you after I speak here, but I'm willing to take any questions at this point.
Mr. Seacrest, how does this affect the overall timeline, or are you going to get to that?
So it hasn't affected the overtime line. When we presented in November, we said it could take anywhere from 0 to 12 months to get this accomplished. And our goal is to actually hit the time frame of the swim season, which is next fall.
Right.
So right now, we're still in that time frame. But like I said, my biggest fear was we hit the perfect time of the season where you have 3 holidays falling back to back. And in my experience, even as an architect, we always had trouble with contractors during Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's, because somewhere in there, they're taking off a week. So that's almost 4 weeks of time to get anybody to respond to anything. But we still pushed it forward. We had everything out on the 9th, even though they didn't respond or they didn't call us back. Some of them, right before Christmas, said they weren't going to do anything. We had 2 respond that they weren't going to bid it. And then basically those first 10 days of January, we had 2 respond that they were. And they were actually out to the site and visited last week. So they're working on that proposal now, and then we'll get them on the 24th. But we're still falling within that window. I mean, I'll give you an update if we see that window falling, but right now we're falling on the schedule I thought we would be on at this point in time.
Thank you.
Or am I to understand we currently have two bidders?
We do.
Okay.
And just to clarify, on the 19th, the board actually approved a contract that we're using that Palm Beach County already approved. I think it had 8 contractors on there, so we contacted 4 of them now. 2 of them said no, and 2 of them were bidding it.
Is there a possibility of more people bidding on it? Or are we closing that window?
At this point, I only needed 3 to bid. So now we've actually had 4 no bids, or 2 no bids and 2 contractors bidding. So we're okay with that process.
Okay.
But I'm glad we have 2, because then we can at least compare 2 different prices.
The updated dates that you have that you're saying you're going to give to us, would it be possible for you to upload that to the agenda item so that the public will have it?
I can give that to Diane.
Thank you.
We just made those changes roughly last week. As contractors were informing us they couldn't do the work, and we were trying to keep the process moving, so we had to adjust some of the dates.
Madam Chair, if I can ask a question. Chief DeShazo, was there a page, I know we had discussed at executive team or Dr. Miller creating a page on the district website for full transparency of the timeline of where we're at with the pool, similar to what we did with negotiations, so that the community was able to track that, or at least we can refer them back to that site. Has that been in the works, or has that been completed, or still a go?
Yes, thank you. It is definitely in the works. Chief DeShazo is checking right now to see if it is actually updated, but it was in the works as of last week. And if it's not updated, including this slide as well. So yes, it was updated on 12/17, and we will include these latest updates from tonight.
Thank you.
Dr. Miller, the community people that contact us, are they aware that they can go to the website to see the updates? I feel like there might be a way to eliminate what should I call it? The communication of what's going on, where are we? If we can direct them to the website and it's real time as to how things are happening, I think we can be way more efficient.
Yes, ma'am, I agree with you, and especially this presentation that Mr. Seacrest is giving right now. This was pushed out to people that inquired, but when this gets on the website, 100%, we will be directing people there, and that'll be a constant spot with all of the updates that when the emails or the inquiries come in, we can push them right to that information.
Any further question? Thank you.
Right. So now we're going to move to topics for our March 7th joint meeting. Dr. Moriarty, are there any topics you would like to have us present to the joint meeting? We're going to just go in a row here.
So I think, and I guess I would look to Derek, I think we should do something with our specialty programs, so the pieces that we're pushing out now. So that would be specialty programs, it would be, March 1st would be controlled open enrollment. And then the third thing I think that we should really push, which I think we've been doing a really good job at, is kindergarten. And hopefully that, you know, I think that that's VPK, kindergarten, that early learning piece, because I think that's really a place that we can recover some FTE. I mean, I think that children who come to your school when they're that young, and then they know where the bathroom is, and they know where the lunchroom is, and they know where the library is, and they know all those other things, they tend to stay. And those parents tend to get involved and they tend to stay. So I think the better job we do at that, at promoting that and pushing that, whether it's the kindergarten blast-off piece, whether it's the VPK enrollment piece, I mean, but I think those pieces are something that we could really get some mileage out of. So that's would be what I would be looking at.
Russell.
Ms. Roberts hit everything on my list, so thank you.
Do we want to talk about our branding efforts at the schools? The naming?
We absolutely can.
Is it too soon?
Well, it's definitely not too soon. We have one, we're pushing the schools through in cohorts, so we can give them individualized attention with, first of all, working with the sites and their school advisory councils on what they're looking to accomplish with, whether it's a rebrand of something they've had, but they kind of want to bring it into where we're going now, or if it's an up brand where they've never had really any attractor programming and we're trying to get that established for them. We're having them work not only with our Innovation and Choice Department and the Public Information Office, but we're giving them one-on-one attention from the Donovan Group, which is our school communications professionals that assist them with kind of identifying their value propositions and what they have to do to get a brand up and running. You all heard I want to say it was probably a couple months ago now, from the first cohort of schools where they came forward and gave their presentations. We've now moved on into cohort 2, which involves about the same number of schools, and we're going to keep working through that process until all of our schools have something established, and then give them the ongoing professional development and support to keep those things running, to understand what it really means to market, to understand what kind of capital upgrades and professional learning is required. So we can absolutely give you any information you're looking for. And I know Ms. Barros is here too. She's been heavily involved because this is a heavy lift for the Innovation and Choice Office, what they're doing as well.
Yeah, maybe just give like a little presentation of a school that's already gone through it and one that you're taking through to show them both.
Absolutely.
Both sides.
Yep, I would say our first cohort, definitely with the specialty pathways, is off and running. I think, like with anything new that hasn't happened before, it's word of mouth is the best sales tool that you can have, especially for these programs in elementary where we've never had these authentic attractor programs. So we're really going to kind of get our footing in this first specialty pathways application, and as those programs build and parents realize, yes, this is something that's new, this is how it's happening on my child's campus, they speak to their friends and neighbors, we'll really kind of see the fruits of that labor. But we'd be happy to have that put together for you.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Pritchett? Maybe we could strategically pick, say, like 2 elementary schools or an elementary and a middle school that we would like to kind of like target that have been through this process and really try to highlight those to see if we can drive some enrollment at those schools. So kind of instead of like all of our schools are doing a branding, if we just were like, here's XYZ middle school, et cetera, and we want to tell you about the exciting things that are happening at this school and what's going on there that people might want to be interested in and come to enroll. So then I think that might, I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't want an overall, I want to be specific, so where the successes are and how it's working.
Absolutely. And we're trying to tell some of those vignettes with social media and with different things that we do with our advertising to kind of get an awareness about it. We're tying in, like when we have content from a school that relates to the pathway, we're reminding parents that this is something new and they can apply now. But that is definitely part of our overall strategy, is to make sure that we tie more of what our content is, to Ms. Roberts' point, to make sure that people know that these are things that are happening that are new, and we want to kind of make parents and the community be able to feel what those are. And we have had some success with those. There's some academies that I think are really resonating with people because it really fits into the culture of where that school, you know, whether the school where it's located or kind of some programming that they've already had in place. And we can bring some of that to you, but I just know that it is part of our strategy with public information to tie that into our ongoing story through this application period.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Mrs. Powers is following along on the workshop. She cannot be here this evening, but since she is following along, there's been a request for staff to give an update on the pool's progress at the joint meeting.
Dr. Miller, you heard that, an update on the pool as well for the joint meeting.
Yes, thank you.
So now we're going to go to school board policies. Let me just get to my, and this is policy 601, 5113.01, school choice, intra-district rescind. Do I have any discussion? Actually, I want to take a moment. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to comment on any of these policies? Seeing none, I can move on now. So this is a rescission. Does anyone have any discussion about this policy? We vote on this? We're just, okay. So the next policy is 6.02, and this is 511302, school choice for full-time employees. Any discussion on this one?
Yeah, so we had an update on this one, correct, on page 3, adding some language, yellowed language under scope of assignment,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is good. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. The next policy is 6.03, 5113.03, school choice for residents and non-residents new. Is there any discussion on this policy?
That also has an
Chief DeShazo, did you want to talk about this at all, to give us a kind of explanation?
I absolutely, I can answer any questions you may have. The intent of the kind of the revisions of these policies and the rescinding of 5.113.01 was to to bring all of our policies into an agreement with one another. The established policies, the way they were written, they were accurate, but some of the language contradicted each other, especially when we're in situations where we're operating district-wide controlled open enrollment. So all of these policies are kind of designed to work in tandem to address all of our school choice considerations and all of the different preference levels, whether it be for in-county residents, employee preference, those types of things.
Does anyone have any questions about this? Thank you. The next policy is 6.04, 5121, controlled open enrollment. Go ahead.
So this is there's a couple comments about controlled open enrollment. One is, I think as a board, we should be aware that when we designate, and correct me if I'm wrong, when we designate a school as open for controlled open enrollment and we don't put any limits on it, it opens the entire school and removes it from the ability to do choice or anything else. It throws it into the controlled open enrollment arena where this then takes place with the buckets and with the phase 1, phase 2, et cetera, correct? And you're nodding your head that that's correct. So I think that in the past, I think it's something that we need to remember in our heads, that when we're opening schools for controlled open enrollment, if we want to change that in any way and say we're going to reserve X number of seats, or we're going to do 90%, or we're going to put some parameter on that, that then it gives us the ability to maintain some seats for choice that we would lose when we designate the whole school as controlled open enrollment. Is that correct? Okay. And then that being said, I know that on page 3, one of the changes that's being proposed, that we have to decide what we want to do. So remember, when you apply, the first thing is that in March, correct me if I'm wrong, the whole month of March is considered one day. So anybody who applies in the month of March, it doesn't matter if you apply on the 1st or the 31st, all those people are going to go into a lottery. But everybody who you get in the month of March ends up in a bucket, which we call phases.
That is
And-
correct.
And if we have, for instance, if we have 100 seats, we start with phase 1. All the people that are in phase 1, if it's less than 100, they are all going to get a seat. We don't need to run a numeric lottery with that. If we had 100 seats and there were 200 people in phase 1, there would need to be a lottery, and they would be assigned in that order. Once that bucket is exhausted, you go to the next bucket, the next bucket. So on page 3, you're asking us whether we want to introduce into this the ability to create a bucket between the district people who are in phase 1. Phase 1 meaning active duty, foster care, et cetera, employee children, that type of thing. Those would all be people who are sitting in phase 1. Phase 2 normally is people who do not meet that requirement. They're in district, but they don't meet any of those requirements. And I think the option that we're being faced with is if in between those two, we create another bucket that says if you want to be in a specialty pathway program, you would get to be in another bucket. So if you would normally be in bucket 2, which would then become bucket 3.
Correct.
You would now have priority over those other people if you picked a specialty pathway. So
That
for
is
instance, if
correct.
Brian and I are sitting in bucket 2, we don't meet any of the other requirements, we're not foster children, we're not military, we're not employee children, et cetera, and we're sitting here, but we're in district, we would normally be sitting in the same bucket. But if he agreed that he was going to a signature pathway program, he would be given a priority over me, who wasn't interested in a signature pathway.
That is correct. It's a method to prioritize our strategic plan, future readiness, so that we prioritize students who want to enter acceleration mechanisms or specialty pathways in our high schools.
And then later, further down, when you go into the next group of buckets, which are then including out-of-county students. So it's out-of-county students that are military, foster care, et cetera, those people. And then there were those people that were out of county, and then you sat there and you said, okay, now I've got another bucket of people who don't meet any of those requirements. This was adding that same intermediate bucket in between the two for specialty pathways.
That's correct. That would allow out-of-district or out-of-county students priority into one of our specialty pathways over someone who doesn't want to be in a specialty pathway. So an example would be a student from St. Lucie County applying to go to South Fork, but if they want to be in IB or in one of our specialty pathways, they would be at a higher priority than someone who does not. So that addition would allow for us to prioritize the specialty pathways.
So I'm interested in, I don't know how the rest of you feel, but I'm interested in adding those intermediate buckets for specialty pathways. I think that would be appropriate to do that. The other thing I wanted to clear up, just so that we have a clear understanding of this, in both Phase 1 and let's call it it would be Phase 4 now, which is the bucket that talks about active duty military foster care, et cetera. One bucket being the people who are living in Martin County, and another bucket being the people who are not living in Martin County. Those buckets in controlled open enrollment also include employees, children of employees. And so I want to understand this correctly, that when we do controlled open enrollment, so let's say we take Anderson Middle School and we open it wide open for open enrollment, that if we hold anything back, that gives us the ability to use the other policy, not the controlled open enrollment policy, but the choice policy for employees, and allows us so that if I lived in Port St. Lucie and you live in Martin County and we're both working for the school district, that if they designate that school as controlled open enrollment, our children are in different buckets. But if we pull out some seats to hold back for choice, not for controlled open enrollment, it creates a situation from a hiring perspective, et cetera, to be able to say that your employees have the ability to get assigned to a school, et cetera, without having to do the controlled open enrollment with, if I'm reading the policy correctly, with the same benefits of controlled open enrollment, as long as I'm an employee in good standing, et cetera, that my child can stay there through their term to the highest grade, which kind of is mimicking the controlled open enrollment piece. Is that correct?
That is correct. So what it would do for our employees would give them the highest priority. So if you're employed here and you live out of our county, you get the highest priority to just be like, you're zoned for that school. It's an automatic approval if the new policy or the amended policy goes through.
But even if the amended policy goes through, we still need to be careful, because if we open wide open for controlled open enrollment and designate an entire school for open enrollment, I've eliminated that.
Yes, then it makes it very challenging to not be exceeding the number of seats available when an employee applies for a seat.
I think I understand that now. Thank you.
All right, so the next policy is 6.05, 6560, retiree health insurance. Mr. Calderon.
Okay. So this is the second time that we are seeing this board policy. We were here in September of 2024, and this policy was first brought up for discussion. And at that time, the board had some data requests, and our staff has worked together to present that data. And so just looking for direction from the board. If you want, I can go through it. Or if you've had a chance to take a look at it, I can answer any questions. More than happy to do whatever the board wishes.
Everyone has gone through the policy, so I think it's a discussion that we need to have. And I'll start with Dr. Bryan. Well, it's easier to.
Okay. So let me try to break this into buckets again, okay? So the
Yes.
first thing we have is we have a health insurance subsidy, right? So the state of Florida gives a health insurance subsidy based on your years of teaching experience, and you get and that number has recently increased.
Yeah, it's years of service, not
Years of
teaching.
service,
Yeah.
years of service.
Yes.
And that number has increased. And they went from $5 to $7.50. We were at $5, and this was, as background, this was brought in when we did the conversion back whenever of trying to get retirees to understand that they could get Medicare supplements, and it would be a much more appropriate health insurance choice. But we did this. And if I'm reading this correctly, we have, it's costing us $1 million a year.
Correct.
Correct? And at the $1 million a year, so this is just one piece of it. So this one is costing us $1 million a year. So I think in this case, for the $1 million a year, since we got it so that if you were an employee and you got 5 from the state for every year, you then got 10, because we were throwing in, if the state is throwing in $750, I think at the very least, we should be cutting that in half, which would put us at $550 for the number they would still be getting the 10. I'm not sure how much longer we can afford to keep paying this, but I guess in my world, I would say that the health insurance subsidy, if I were doing it, I would say we're cutting it in half. We would rewrite the policy so instead of being $5 for every year of service, it's $2.50 for every year of service, and it expires at some point in time. That it's for the next, pick a day, December 31st of 2035, it goes away completely. I don't know of any other district that's doing it. Are you aware of any district that's doing this?
I am not aware of any other district that's doing this. I've been here almost 9 years. Pam Kimberlin, our coordinator of benefits and leave, has been here even longer. We have reached out to all of our resources, different conferences, different listservs. There's nobody that we are aware of that does a specific district subsidy for health insurance.
I know that Mrs. Powers, is Mrs. Powers listening? Is she in the sky?
I know she's watching. She's not live
okay.
through our cloud, but she's listening.
I know
watching.
that she was part of this discussion when we initially had it, so I'm curious as to what her thoughts are. But my thought is that we cut it if we do something with it, if we're short of eliminating it, we cut it by a number for a certain number of years, and then it goes away. But Marcia, if you're listening, can you beam us down a thought, please? So that, yeah. Yeah. So if we can break it down into pieces. So let's just talk about the health insurance subsidy first. So yeah, okay.
That was gonna be my suggestion as well, bringing it back down, by 250, keeping it at 10, so it's the same. But also putting it far out, because we have to understand, even people who are gonna be, who are in the drop program, they've anticipated the amount of money that's coming forward, right? I mean, I just wanna make sure that we are thoughtful of how we're backing it down. So putting it out to, like you said, 2035, I'm okay with something like that, a date that's pushed out, so that way they can plan for that properly.
Absolutely. That 50.
So why did the FRS up it to 750, Mr. Calderon?
I don't have an answer for that. That was something that was decided by the governor in July of 2023 that was signed into law. So I think that the reasoning behind that is to assist retirees with the increasing cost of health care. But so it's been a great thing from an FRS perspective, and the board has, this is the first time the board's taken a look at this specific policy since that law changed on July 1st, 2023.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we could definitely use to save the money in the district. I just want to be very careful that we're sensitive to this group, and that we're aware that how they should be treated. So I like that we're doing something, and we're doing the 250, and I like that we're pushing it out. So I think I would go along with that, because at least there's something. I actually went back to 2015 and watched that meeting. Mrs. Roberts?
It was a vivid one, wasn't
You haven't aged a day.
You're so kind.
And Mrs. Powers was there as well. 4.5-hour meeting, great meeting. And the community was very, they showed up. And I just want to make sure that we're sensitive to this group and that we're doing the right thing. So, but I do understand that we have a budget and that we have to do what's best for the district as well. So that's why I asked that question, and thank you.
Buckets?
So that was bucket number one, that was the
Right.
health insurance subsidy.
Yeah.
The next piece has to do with a stipend for people who stay on our health insurance policy. And I'm going to divide those into two groups. Bucket number one, in that being the people who are not in drop, so the people who are actually retired. So I have an actual retiree. So let's say I worked 30 years for the district. I started when I was 20. I worked 30 years for the district. I retired when I was 50. And if you had 30 years of experience or 30 years of work with the district has agreed that we will give you $6,500 a year to help pay for your insurance. If you had 20 years of experience, you got half of that. So there was a 100%, 75, 50, and 25% number. This is also unusual for what everybody in the state is doing. It's part of the Martin County difference, I think. We're looking at, I believe it's 117 people, correct? Don?
Correct. There is 117 retirees that are currently on the district's group health insurance plan. If you take a look at the slide that we pulled up here, we have them organized by years of service, so you can see, based on years of service, how much the board is contributing, and that is based on the $6,500 active employee contribution towards medical insurance.
So the total cost for that over 15 years is $2 million.
Correct,
Okay.
2.1 million. Yes.
So it's 2.1, but that's over a 15-year spread. And the part that was difficult, however many years ago that was somebody who retired, right? Who in doing their financial planning was figuring that they were going to have access to a health insurance policy. And that was part of their planning, part of their budgeting, part of their planning, et cetera. And now they're, to say, well, no, you're not going to get any of that, seemed a little bit harsh and uncaring in order to do that. So, I mean, and when you look at this and you're looking at the numbers, 25% of the number is coming in this year, like 510 of it is like right away. And then it kind of tapers off. At the very least, I think we should stop it at some point. So even if you said at the end in June of 2038, because we have no cost, that this no longer happens, what that means is that if you're planning on retiring, you're 50 years old, you're planning on retiring, you're given notice that it still is available for a period of time, but when you reach whatever age you reach in 2038, it will not be available.
Right.
So it'll continue. And I want to be clear that this is the 117 people that are here on the insurance now, that if somebody retires tomorrow, they get added to this list, and this 2.1 something goes up, correct?
Correct. So Pam Kimberlin and Gabrielle Swain from the Guerin Group worked to take the numbers based what we had on file from September of 2024. So all the numbers that you're seeing here is based on September 2024 data, but yes.
So, and I think what I'm thinking is if there's a middle ground so that you say, okay, anybody who's currently, any of these 117 people who are currently on here, this is the plan for you. We will give you this, all right? And I know that you people are costing me $2 million in order to do that. For any new retiree, you can have it for 5 years. You can have it for, some period of time, so that if you're planning, you're 50 years old, you're 60 years old, and you're working on planning your retirement, to have this just yanked from you, I really think is pulling the rug out from you. And I think that's something that is harsh, for lack of a better word. So, I mean, but I think if you gave people 4 or 5 years of notice,
yeah.
I think that's enough notice to say, you can count on me for that period of time. But if you're 50 years old and you're thinking about retiring and you thought you were going to get 6,500 every year for the next 15 years, you might want to work another 5 years and cut that in half
Right.
and do something along those lines.
Then would that cost us any more money if they,
Well,
if
it
they
would.
walk?
So
yeah.
like anything that we do is going to cost us more
Right.
than this. But I mean, so if we said never again, like
Right.
you 117 that are here now, never again, we're not doing anything for you. We would, like, if we told the 117 people, sorry, you're not getting anything, that would save us the $2 million over 15 years.
Right.
But I think that's a little,
That would-
that's a
that's the
lot of
harsh.
bad press.
Yeah, that's the harsh.
So I think that's kind of, and I think when you look further out, when you're looking at 2031, 2032, where your numbers are less than 100,000, those numbers don't really concern me, if those numbers didn't grow. But if Mrs. Pritchett retires at 50 next year and we keep something in play, those numbers will grow. So I'm thinking that these people are given a pass and allowed to stay in at the 2 million, and that we pick a period of time and say, for the next X number of years, we will do whatever it is we're going to do.
I agree with that. What I don't agree with is the amounts that they're getting with
Okay.
the new batch of people. I think we need to shave it.
Okay?
So I'm willing to listen to anybody's ideas, but I do like the idea of leaving these 117 as they are, but anyone new coming on has a date where it ends, and I think we can use that 5 years is reasonable, or whatever other people think. I mean, I don't know what the magic number is, but I think the amounts that we're giving annually should be,
Yeah, and the only problem I have with the annual amounts, I would rather cut the number of years you're getting it than cut the amount. Because if you're sitting here right now in January thinking you're going to retire at the end of the year, and you're planning on, in your planning, you're thinking you're going to get 6,500, to find out through social media that that number just got dropped, I think is a harsher cut than finding out you're still going to get the 6,500, but there's a finite life to it. You're not going to get the 6,500 until you're 65. You're going to get it for X number of years, and you plan accordingly. But then we've given people a chance to plan. I mean, I think that's, so somebody who's looking, I mean, because I'm sure we have people who are, say, 60 years old who are planning on retiring at the end of this year, and who are thinking in their mind that it's 6,500, knowing that it can go away, but thinking, well, the board would never do that, you know? But I mean, I kind of feel that,
well, let's,
I do tend, I mean, I'm leaning more, he said, only because I feel like, you know, putting myself in their shoes, what would I want somebody to do for me? And, you know, like she said, they've already planned to have that amount, and I would hate, especially with the times we're going through right now, money's tight for everyone. So I want to be cognizant of that and make sure that, you know, if we're going to do it, we give them plenty of time to plan for an alternate path, how they can come up with the extra money, how they can figure this out. But if we take money away from them, if we cut the years, they have time to plan for that. But if we take the money and start stepping it down right away, they're going to have to think fast, and not everybody has the means to do so.
does 5 years seem reasonable?
I mean, I'm okay with that. I mean, maybe 5 to
10?
7, you know.
No, we have to find ways to save money, and 10 years is basically it's another, we're looking at this line here, we're talking about the same kind of money.
Madam Chair, some feedback from Mrs. Powers would be and I'm not sure at what point, I think it was to Mrs. Roberts' request, was to decrease to 2.5 and then cut after 3 years for it to expire July 1 of 27.
so she's talking about the health.
The first
Insurance.
piece, the first piece, yes. I just wanted to make sure that was said, though.
Okay.
No.
Should we finish this up and then go back and decide if we want to entertain that or how do we want to?
For the record, I just wanted that to be on the table for the
Okay.
feedback, so.
All right. Gotcha.
We could finish up with this bucket
And then
of
go back
people,
to
and then
the-
go back to the other one, because Julie brought up a good point, and I just want to clarify something you said about the over 65, so we could keep talking about this bucket.
Okay, so,
And if Marcia has something, she can call in with her information on that. So anyway, that's my thinking, is that the people that we know over the next so many years are going to cost us 2.1 million. We thank you for your service. We understand that you retired. We know you're our best ambassadors out there for how great our school district is, et cetera. We've lived up to the promise that we made to you. We didn't take anything away from you. You're costing us 2.1 million over that period of time, but we're willing to figure out how to make that work. So that's that piece.
And,
And-
oh, I'm sorry.
No,
No,
go
and I
ahead.
just wanted to add that our district is also the only district within our neighboring districts, comparing to Palm Beach, Indian River, St. Lucie, and even Okeechobee, that the district contributes towards the retiree health insurance under 65. So all of our neighboring districts will offer the same plans that they can enroll in actives, but they're not contributing anything at all.
Right.
Basically, when you retire, you don't get anything else.
Right.
You can stay enrolled in the plan, but you're not getting anything from the board.
And I'm thinking that if you say, even if you kept these numbers the same, the 6,500, et cetera, and you said, if you retire in the next 5 years, anytime in the next 5 years, if you meet the requirements, this is the money that you get. But there's a date certain on it. You know, there's a date certain that this is going to go away. On January 1st of 2030, it doesn't happen anymore. The only people that will be getting a payment towards their health insurance after January 1st of 2030 will be people who are one of these 117 people that are still alive and still on district insurance.
That
would
would
be-
go to 2035 is what we were thinking,
no.
or no?
Well, so the people who are existing, the
The one existing,
117,
yes.
will go out to 2038.
Okay,
So all of these people, so whenever they retired in here
Right.
before, these 117 that are already retired get what they,
right. I thought we had suggested 10 years. That's why I said, was it
No,
2035?
10
oh,
years
that was
is
for the health insurance.
for the health insurance.
Oh, for that one, okay.
And that's the one
I'm
that
in old buckets.
Marcia wants to make it 3.
We'll go to that. This
Oh,
is the
okay.
one where we're giving
Right,
a
okay.
certain number. This is the $2 million price tag.
Got it.
So this is saying that this is January of 2025, and if you were planning on retiring in the end of this year,
Right.
in the summer of 2025, instead of saying you get nothing,
Right.
I think there's a 5-year period of time that you will get, if you have 30 years of experience, you will get $6,500. If you have 25 years of experience, you will get the 75%. And so so that gives you some time to plan. So if you were planning on
Retiring, you have 5 years to
you've
retire.
got 5 years to figure it out and figure out
And
where
it
you are.
also gives you the opportunity, maybe I won't retire yet.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll wait. So if I understand in recap, the current 117 retirees will go out to the span that you have on here. 2038 is the last time they'll get money.
Well, until they reach age 65.
Correct.
And then when they reach age 65, they go into that other bucket of the Martin County Health Insurance Subsidy.
Okay, but,
So,
Or not, but we're just talking about
Right.
these 117 right now. These are people, the 117, that get money to help pay for their health insurance until they reach the age of 65,
correct.
correct? That's what we're talking about.
Correct, yes.
and any new ones that enter currently, besides these, so anyone new, 5 years, and it stops.
Okay.
So they get the same 6,500 annually if they have 30 years of experience or 30 years of service or more, and then dropping down to the 75, 50, 25, but that they don't get another payment after January 1st, or it doesn't get paid for anymore. It gets prorated into their payments, right?
Right, so I think in what I'm hearing is that you want to, the 117, you want to keep whole, and then new retirees within the 5 years, you would like to keep whole, but it all ends on, and I think that's when the board,
2030,
that's the
Yes.
board's
5
decision.
years.
Yes. January
June,
1st,
June,
Or June
whatever
30th,
that date
2025.
is, yes.
June 30, 2030. So that if I am 64
6/30,
years.
30.
yeah,
So
30,
I-
30, I
if
can't
I'm
believe it, yeah.
64 years old and I retire in June of 2029, I will get this with 30 years of experience for the next year, that one gap year until I hit Medicare age, I will get $6,500,
Okay,
right?
correct. And then to go back to the old bucket, then what happens when they turn 65? Are they entitled to that $2.50?
So we're going back
Okay.
there, you
Okay.
understand this one, right?
I got this one, yeah, I got this one.
Okay, so back to the health insurance subsidy bucket where we said the number will be dropped to $2.50 a month. And I think the start date should be the July 1 date, right? Okay, so I think we should make that the July 1 date when we're starting our year.
Of
Of
this year? Okay.
Right? So that would be July 1 of 2025. They start getting $250, and they get it for 10 years. Now, the question then is, do they all get it, or do they get it? Do the ones who are getting it now get it?
What about the new ones?
Or what about the new
Where do
ones
they-
that you're
where do they
adding in?
go? Do they go on that tenure, or do they go?
I think you give them 5 years. I think it's the same thing. It's the same 5-year period.
It's consistent.
It's 5 years. So if you're new joining this bucket, you retire, you're over 65, you're getting a health insurance subsidy, and I see that look back there. You're getting,
No, I'm trying to think how we're going to administer it, but I got it. We'll get it.
yeah, but
Okay.
you get the health insurance subsidy. So these people who are getting it now, the only thing that they're gonna see different is it's gonna drop to $250. So the people in the health insurance subsidy that are costing $1 million, $1,000,001, right? That cost is gonna drop us to $550, okay? For the existing people, the existing 764 retirees. For the next 10 years, we'll get $250 per year instead of $5 per year. So that cost gets cut in half. Anybody new who retires can get a health insurance subsidy, but that runs out after 5 years. And in 5 years, we're out of, so the only health insurance subsidy business we're in after 5 years is this 764 for another 5 years. That make sense?
Yeah, I'm just going to interrupt to say that Mrs. Powers is going to call in and weigh in.
Oh, good.
I think that's changed, Mrs. Pritchett, so we're good. You're not taking a vote. She said she's good.
Okay. So did we want to discuss 3 years over 5 years? Or has that been, Ms. Powers recommended possibly 3 years instead of 5 years? I know it's a lot to absorb, but
Yeah.
I want to make sure that everybody's heard.
Sure.
I'd cut it in half and say 4 years for the new people. We're saying 5, or she's saying,
3 years instead of 5 years.
and so I'm saying,
So
let's
for
make
the
it
new-
4 years.
So for the new people that are coming into these pools, if you will, instead of 5 years for the subsidy, 3 years for the subsidy.
Sure.
That's
Would you
what-
like a staff recommendation?
Yes.
Okay. My recommendation would be for however long you decide you want to give the over 65 Martin County Health Insurance subsidy, I think my opinion is that it should end on a certain date. Whether you've been in there for the next 10 years or 3 years, 4 years, I think my opinion is you should have a hard stop date. So you know when the final payment of that health insurance subsidy is, because you're still, I just think it's going to be easier to administer, to communicate, and it's a lot to have to go on an individual basis. That's my recommendation.
Didn't we say 6/30/30?
Well, 6/30/35, I think you had said for those that are currently in it, they were going to get it for 10 more years, right? Is that what you said? For 10 years, they were going to get this
Are you
250?
talking about the health insurance
Which ones-
subsidy, or what are you talking about?
The health insurance subsidy, now the 250 per month per year of service.
So what we were talking about with the health insurance subsidy is allowing the people who are in there now. Page one.
They're going to get it for
They
the
would get it
time
for-
that they,
For 10 years, they would get 250 per year of service for 10 years.
Got that, okay.
Right.
And then new people who were coming into it, so that's the, you got it on 2 different pages for me.
Are you saying put the new people for 10 years too, Mr.
no,
Calderon, or no?
no.
No.
He's saying a hard date. I thought we said 6/30/30.
I have written down that you said 6/30/30 was to end the under 65 contribution.
Okay, all right. So 5 years from now, what is the last date of when school, isn't it when the year ends, make it that date in that year? 5 years out?
Okay, so let me try to, so the people who are under age 65, okay? We're keeping the $2.1 million people. The $2.1 million people are all, so if you're sitting at home and you're getting you're retired and you're getting a contribution towards your health insurance and you had 30 or more years of experience, you're gonna get $6,500 a year until you get to age 65 and you go on Medicare, okay?
Got it.
If you're planning on retiring soon, then you will only be eligible for this 6,500 or whatever the number is, lesser if you have lesser years of service. You will only be eligible for that number until June 30th of 2030.
Got it.
Okay?
Got that, yes.
So that's item number 1. Item number 2 is the health insurance subsidy. So the health insurance subsidy, which is the thing that costs us $1 million a year for the people who are currently in it, not counting anybody else who is retiring, but the people who are currently in it. We have 764 of those. So the discussion on the 764 that's costing us $1.1 million is to cut those people in half and cut them down to 250, which means those 764 would come to it as a cost of 550. Then we're going to address the ones that are joining the pool afterwards. Quite frankly, I'm completely happy with if you join the pool after, it's gone. You're over 65 and it's gone. And just say, we're not even dealing with that. If you're over 65, you're getting $750 from the state. The reason that the state raised it is because they knew that the cost had gone up, they wanted to pay it, but we're the only ones doing it.
Correct.
So over 65, it's over.
Over 60, for the health insurance subsidy, that the health insurance subsidy goes away. What do you think of that? So the health insurance subsidy for the people who are currently getting it, the $5 per year of service,
Yeah.
right? So if you have 20 years of service, you're getting a monthly stipend. And right now it's $5 per year of service, and you're getting $750 per year of service from the state.
So you're getting $10 total
You're getting
per
12
month.
You're getting $12.50
They're
now.
getting $12.50
Right.
now, they're going to 10.
Now going to 10.
I'm just wondering who's going to track all of this, to keep track of this.
Our department.
I mean, this is confusing to just listen to. I mean, I can't even imagine people in the audience what they might be thinking. But Don, you're going to keep track of every person that's when and where and.
I am
We have it.
fully,
We have it. We
fully
we now-
confident.
Yeah, so part of our partnership of having Bentech be our benefit enrollment system, over the past couple of years, Sandy Eckhart from our office helped develop with Bentech a retiree suite. So we actually track all of our retirees in Bentech, same as active employees. So we can do it. But I guess the board just needs to kind of come to a conclusion on if there's going to be any kind of quote new enrollment in the Martin County Health Insurance Subsidy after they reach 65 or over. Because we have 764 on there right now that are going to get dropped to 250 starting on July 1st, 2025. But I guess my question is to you all is for those that are going to be turning 65 within the next 10 years when this is still in play, what happens to those people, those retirees?
I think the subsidy goes away.
Okay.
But that's me.
Give them 5 years
Or to give them 5 years.
at the 250 and give them 5 years of it. And once they leave, so correct me if I'm wrong, Sandra, but once they leave, they can't come back and get it back, correct? So once they've left and they don't claim it and they don't get it, then they don't resurface, right?
Yeah. You have to retire with one of our district-sponsored group health plans to have it as a retiree. Can't retire and then come back. Yeah.
I'm okay with the five years, with the 250 a year for 5 years and say. It's the same 5 years that we're saying for the other things. If you're coming up and you're retiring or you're reaching that age, you know?
I think the difference is though you're on Medicare and we're struggling to give our current teachers subsidy for the increase in health insurance. I feel like we should be using the money for the teachers here. That's just nothing against retirees, but once you're on Medicare, I feel like Medicare takes that. Plus, they're going to continue to get the $750 from the state. So it isn't,
It's $75 a month is what it comes out to be at 250.
well,
I'm willing to get rid of it completely. I'm willing
I
to.
just think over 65 is a totally different scenario. And they're going to know way ahead of time. This isn't like we're springing on them. We're right?
Correct. Yeah, correct. And, you know, I'm trying to be sensitive of all the different variables here, but the board is still going to contribute the percentage of the contribution of the $6,500 for the
Right.
next 5 years.
Right.
So that's very fair. And we are the only school district in the state of Florida that we're aware of that even does something over 65. None of our neighboring districts do anything for those that are under 65. So I think
Madam,
5 years is fair.
Madam Chair, if I can make a recommendation that you've all given some clear direction to staff, let staff put all of that together, very clear and delineated for each bucket, and for us to be able to bring back the final, the recommendation. This is just the first time you all are putting, you have time. This is going to come back to you again, so I want staff to be able to clean it up, put it all into those buckets spelled out, and then bring it to the board, back forward to the board.
That's fine with me.
Then we have one more. So did you want us to continue discussing what our preferences were, or do you want the staff to give us some? I don't understand what you're saying.
No,
to
you
us.
can keep going. I just wanted to move us along from that one because staff's going to need to be able to take all of those recommendations and type them up and be ready to go. And you're down a board member, but it's only a recommendation.
Yeah,
So
right.
So what was the pleasure of the board for the over 65?
5 years.
5 years, okay.
Then the third piece, what is our third bucket? That's 1, 2, and the third bucket is people who are
Those that are in drop.
the drop people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of talked about those though, because they're, because you said for those 117 current retirees, you're going to keep whole. And then also, you said new ones that retire within 5 years. So that is not only making up your drop employees, but also any employees that are in the FRS investment plan that may retire as well.
So you gave us another sheet. I know that the
Yeah.
2.1 is taking care of the 117 that aren't in drop. Don't I have another sheet that's giving me the numbers?
Yeah, so this was a little bit more difficult to gather, but slide 9, there's two types of retirement plans with the FRS, the drop pension and then the investment plan. So the default plan that employees enroll in now through FRS is the investment plan. So we have 1,000 employees enrolled in that. But if you take a look at those employees that are age 50 or older, we have 374 of those employees that are in the investment plan. Those people are very difficult to try to predict when they're going to retire, because as long as they meet FRS retirement eligibility, they can retire at any time. So it's very difficult to track those down.
Don't we know who's currently in drop? Who is employed in the Martin County School District who is currently in drop?
Yeah, we
know
do. We
that?
have that. That's this number right here, the ones that are in drop. But there's also employees that are in the investment plan that are not in drop that are eligible for retire when they meet those FRS requirements.
Not really numbered, though.
The investment plan doesn't offer drop. Drop is through the pension.
Right, but the drop people are the one who are prohibited. So it's my understanding that once I've signed up for drop, I can't change my mind and say, wait, I don't want to do this now, I need to work 3 more years.
Right, you have, FRS changed law, so now you have 8 years. You could be in drop for up to 8 years, but you
Right,
have to
but-
retire by
But
that.
once I tell them I'm in drop, I can't all of a sudden say, I'm 50 years old, I'm 51 years old. Is that true or not true?
That's true. The date that you give them, your drop date, that's your drop date.
That's my drop date, and I can't decide all of a sudden, wait, no, I want to change my mind, I don't want to be in drop anymore.
No, you have to retire by that drop date. You could retire early, but you can't extend it.
Okay, so the people I'm concerned with is, I'm concerned with the district employees that have specified a retirement date. The ones who have signed up for drop, who don't have the flexibility to say, whoops, I changed my mind, let me work 3 more years based on what you guys have done here and take me out of drop. I don't have the ability to get out of drop.
Correct.
Correct. So we're talking about 88 employees that are currently in drop, right?
Correct.
And let's talk about the 66 of them that are under age 65,
Correct.
okay? So the 66 of them that are under age 65, which you're showing me a liability over 15 years, I think we should match that with the 5-year period that we did for the under 65, not Medicare eligible, so that if I signed up for drop 6 years ago, I said I'm going to retire in 2 years, and now all of a sudden I'm not Medicare eligible, I think I fall under that current retirees under 65, not Medicare eligible, like my friends, the 117 friends, but the brand-new ones that are trying to join the group of 117, and a new one who's joining the group of 117 has a 5-year limit on them, correct?
Right, that's what I have from the previous discussion, yes.
So I think if you're in drop, that you join that group of people, that you have the 5-year period of time. Does that make?
I have written.
No, the date is June 30th, 2030.
30, yeah, that's
So
what I have
that's
written
the
down.
date. It's a date certain. It's
Yes.
not a 5-year staggered period, because I think that would drive us nuts,
Yeah,
right?
correct. So if I'm in drop right now and I retire on June 30th, 2027, I know that I am going to have the benefits of an under 65 retiree until June 30th, 2030.
Correct.
Okay.
What about if their date is 8 years out? You said it could be up to 8 years?
Correct.
What if it's longer than 5 years?
Well,
Would they just?
based on the discussion that the board has had, that you'll be good until June 30th, 30/30, but then after that, there's no more contribution towards that insurance for retirees.
So
But they're still active, though. They're still working. They're active employees. They're getting the same contribution as somebody that's not in drop. You can retire within that drop period at any time, as long as you meet the FRS eligibility requirements, but you can't extend your drop date.
Right, but you could move that up.
Correct.
And I think 5 years is a decent planning window.
Okay.
So,
Are you
so
clear on that?
I'm very clear. Yep. So I think what we'll do, staff will, per Mr. Main's request, we'll go ahead and probably come up with like another like abbreviated presentation and just make sure we've got everything. We'll show you the numbers. And then we'll have to work with Mrs. Falls to gather all the information and put it into the Neola policy. Then you could start your process for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that 6560, item number 605 is pushed to another workshop then, right?
No, it's going to,
The policy.
it's going to come to an agenda, right, on a regular meeting for a policy. No? What? Yeah. This will come before us at a regular meeting or not?
You have to vote on it. So
Okay.
yes, staff will put it together with everything that was discussed and then come back to an actual meeting on
Yeah,
a board meeting agenda.
correct. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Just so I'm clear, so it's going to come it's going to come, however, you're going to give us an update on this. We're not making any decision, but we're bringing forward a policy then
So we have a current policy.
that has to be modified to
It
take
has
into
to be
account all these
modified,
things.
yes. So this is a policy that already exists that we are now taking and revamping it with all these new,
We can bring it forward at the February workshop for you to do another look at it to make sure that it is exactly the way you want it.
Right.
Because a lot was discussed tonight.
Correct.
And we want to make sure that all of you are 100% confident and comfortable with what you're voting on. So my recommendation would be the February 1st workshop,
okay,
Then you would do then you would advertise for the advertising review for February with a final read in March, correct?
Correct.
Diane?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's better.
Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Don.
Thank you.
Okay, open to the board. Mrs. Russell. Okay. Dr. Moriarty,
Oh, I like how I didn't go first. Thank you.
you went second.
Yeah. Just a couple of quick things here. On board docs, it still has Mr. DiCerlisi's name. If we could, I don't know who is in charge of that. If we could change that out to me, that'd be great. And I also just wanted to say that at a Stewart Chamber of Commerce meeting, we had a great presentation from Spam Robotics. And those kids are really doing some amazing things. And I just wanted to give kudos to that program. Thank you.
Mrs. Roberts.
Yeah, so I went to the kickoff, the first, whatever day that was. And it's an interesting and timely kind of competition this time. It has to do with water and saving water and cleaning water and all those. So I think for our community especially, it's something that will probably resonate really well. And hopefully they'll be able to get a lot more support from entities that they wouldn't normally think of as being able to get support from because of the topic that was picked. So, and they are planning on going to the World Championship in mid-April, so, in Houston.
Okay. Superintendent May?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'm going to defer my time to a public comment. Ms. Kelly Rubato? Okay, if you would so much as inclined, she could not make it at the exact time of public comment, but she is
Sure.
here and she has been waiting, so.
Hi, I'm Kelly Robato. I am part of the Martin County Council PTA, as well as our local PTA, the school my daughters go to. I have a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old who's hopefully going to be in Citrus Grove next year. I just wanted to introduce myself. We're going to try to be here more often. Our goal is to be more in front of everything, to share what parents are interested in, to kind of give you a voice, and then also support you guys in any way that we can through just outreach and stuff. So this year, the Martin County Council has been actively working alongside various nonprofits for Mountain County, and we're connecting with our families, doing family events. The PTA is also doing unit training to help train our PTAs and build up our PTAs to support our schools. We're hosting monthly meetings and advocacy group. I personally chair the advocacy and legislative group. So my goal is to champion things for our ESE students, for our second language learners. So I'll be going to our legislative branches and helping to push that as well. So we're trying to find ways to engage family, and we appreciate the opportunity that Michael Maines and his team has given us to be able to connect with them on a monthly basis and share what's going on in the schools and what we're seeing as parents, things that we're concerned about so that we can address them. And so we just wanted to give a face to a name. We will be trying to make every meeting now, so that's who we are.
Thank you, Kelly. Welcome.